There was truly no one prepared for the jolt that social media delivered that morning, especially when the jolt arrived in the form of an image so intimately captured, filled with affection and quiet warmth, and more so when the subject of that image was none other than Suga of BTS, yoongi, the enigmatic and famously reserved artist whose public persona rarely, if ever, flirted with glimpses into his private emotional world. And yet here he was, or at least someone who looked unmistakably like him, eyes gently closed, brow softly furrowed as if savoring the moment. His lips pressed against interlocked fingers in what appeared to be a kiss so earnest it instantly dismantled any possibility of it being a staged or casual pose. The setting around them a nondescript, sunlit room with pastel lighting and ordinary objects in the background that only added to the air of quiet intimacy, and the presence of the young woman leaning into him, her hair slightly disheveled and her face, partially visible, did not seem coincidental but rather comfortable, familiar, and then came the three hearts, drawn digitally in pink above their heads, as if the image was never meant to be secret or ambiguous but shared between people unafraid of being seen together. And within minutes, the photo made its rounds from an obscure fan account to Twitter, Reddit, Instagram stories, and K-pop forums worldwide, setting off a chain reaction of disbelief, excitement, and confusion as fans and followers scrambled to analyze every pixel of the image, comparing facial features, jawlines, and clothing patterns with past public appearances of Suga, while others tried to trace the origin of the photo, speculating whether it had been leaked, privately shared, or even perhaps deliberately posted as a soft reveal of a new chapter in the artist's life. And while Big Hit remained silent, neither confirming nor denying, the void of official commentary only deepened the fascination, leading many to revisit the trajectory of Suga's narrative in the public eye. From the brilliant, quiet producer with a poetic soul, to a maturing artist entering his 30s during military service, perhaps now evolving beyond the rigid definitions of idol culture. And as debates flourished across social channels, they grew into two distinct camps, one defending his right to love freely, applauding what they saw as a courageous move towards authenticity, while the other expressed sadness or betrayal, citing the long-standing illusion of connection they felt with an artist who had always kept his emotional cards close to his chest. And in the midst of it all, a Japanese entertainment blog added another layer of intrigue by claiming the woman in the photo was an Osaka-based digital creator previously linked with other entertainment industry names, a detail that was met with both skepticism and urgency as internet sleuths began drawing connections between her Instagram posts and elements visible in the photo, such as matching nail polish or lighting hues that coincided with past selfies. And yet what was perhaps most striking was the woman's own silence, neither deleting nor addressing the viral image, which only fueled the belief that perhaps the image was indeed authentic, not a mistaken identity or fan edit as some had initially assumed. And as this singular moment captured in an unguarded second continued to ripple across fandoms, it gave way to broader discussions not just about privacy and fandom entitlement, but about the emotional cost of celebrity, the fragility of carefully cultivated images, and the possibilities that arise when a public figure chooses, whether consciously or not, to step outside the boundaries that have long defined them. And while Korean mainstream media refrained from reporting on the situation directly, perhaps out of caution or lack of confirmation, global lifestyle publications began weighing in, framing the story with a more nuanced lens, highlighting how such an image, soft, tender, unposed, could be both revolutionary and controversial in a world where every frame of a celebrity's life is scrutinized for hidden meaning or coded messages. And as opinion columns began to surface, most notably from fashion and culture writers in Seoul and Tokyo, they echoed a shared sentiment that this moment, if truly Suga's, marked a shift not only in his personal narrative but in the broader conversation around idols as human beings, navigating love, privacy, and selfhood under the relentless gaze of a global audience. And in that sense, the photo did more than reveal a relationship. It sparked a reevaluation of the parasocial contract between stars and their admirers, a quiet rebellion against the notion that vulnerability must be hidden. And as the hours turned into days, the discourse expanded from a singular viral image into a reflection on what it means to be seen, to be known, and perhaps, finally, to be free. And as the conversation matured, slowly peeling away from the frenzy of who and why toward the deeper question of what it all meant, the image that once felt like a lightning strike now lingered like a cloud, soft, hovering, and impossible to ignore. drawing attention not just to Suga's presence in it, but to the silent choices surrounding its release and reception. And while some netizens speculated that the image may have been shared deliberately as a quiet declaration, others held firm to the theory that it had been unintentionally leaked, perhaps by someone in the artist's close circle or through a private account compromised. Yet even as debates raged on, what was notably absent was panic, neither from Suga nor his agency, which in itself communicated volumes, especially in a cultural ecosystem where dating rumors often lead to immediate apologies, denials, or awkward press statements. And perhaps this time the silence was strategic, an intentional space carved out for interpretation. Without interference, allowing fans and the general public to wrestle with their own expectations of ownership over a public figure's life. And in this pause, a new tone began to emerge, particularly among international fans who responded with overwhelming warmth and support, flooding comment sections with messages like, "He deserves love too," "This is beautiful," and "If he's happy, I'm happy," reframing the discourse from scandal to sincerity. And perhaps most surprisingly, a handful of Korean cultural critics began weighing in through their personal blogs and podcasts. One of them, a well-known writer named Han Min-seo, remarked during a recorded segment that perhaps we are witnessing a generational shift in how idols assert agency over their identities. And if yoongi has indeed chosen to reveal this side of himself, it's a quiet act of liberation that reflects not rebellion, but maturity. A quote that was widely shared and appreciated for its balanced tone. And indeed, the conversation slowly began to evolve from a narrow view of idol decorum toward a more complex meditation on adulthood, boundaries, and growth. And what also gained traction during this phase of the narrative was the dissection of the cultural aesthetics of the photo itself. Its warm color palette, the natural expressions, the lack of curation, all of which pointed toward something raw and sincere, unlike the usual hyper-controlled imagery associated with celebrity PR, and art critics even chimed in online forums likening the composition to candid street photography, where the subject isn't posing for anyone but simply existing in a moment of truth. And this artistic framing added yet another layer to the ongoing analysis, turning a gossip-fueled frenzy into something bordering on cultural study. And as media outlets began reaching out to sources close to the artist, none were able to secure definitive confirmation, but many reported a soft shift in the narrative being discussed. Internally at entertainment desks, what if this isn't a scandal, but a pivot point? A question that hinted at the underlying recognition that even in a hyper-managed industry, change often begins not with an announcement but with an image, and as the news cycle gradually gave way to newer headlines, the photo remained etched in memory, continuously reshared, not in outrage or urgency but in affection and respect, slowly gaining status not as a moment of controversy but of transformation. And speculation around the woman's identity also softened, as neither her nor Suga's silence lent further credibility to rumors, allowing space for a rare form of collective restraint, where the audience, instead of demanding answers, seemed willing to accept ambiguity as a form of grace. And in the following week, Suga's name trended again, not for the image directly, but because a handwritten note was posted to his fan platform. A note that didn't mention the photo but spoke quietly about entering new seasons of life with openness and strength. A phrase many took as his subtle acknowledgement, received not with backlash but with heartfelt responses from fans who felt seen, validated, and proud. And in a sense, this moment, however it originated, became emblematic of a cultural inflection point. A shift not just in Suga's personal trajectory but in the evolving ecosystem of celebrity-fan relationships, where privacy and intimacy are no longer antithetical to transparency, and where a moment of tenderness, once feared as risky, is now viewed as a necessary part of holistic storytelling. And looking ahead, industry insiders have already begun discussing how this incident might influence future agency strategies, how idols might be allowed more freedom to live authentically without fear of economic or reputational backlash. And while it remains to be seen whether others will follow this unintentional blueprint, one thing is certain. In the span of a single image, Suga has managed, perhaps unintentionally,